The offer that we submitted last night has been accepted by the seller. So in this video, we're going to discuss everything that you need to know to ensure that at the closing table, you get those keys in your hand. What's going on, guys? My name is Raoul, broker and owner of Radio Farm Real Estate here in Austin, Texas. One of the first things that you're going to run into after you submit an offer is turning in the money, the earnest money and the option money. The earnest money is the money that's agreed upon, typically 1% of the offer amount that will be turned into the title company. The option period is the period I would like to call it the buyer's remorse period. You can back out the deal within the set period of time that you and the seller agreed on. For this example, we're going to say the house was $500,000. 1% will be $5,000. This is the earnest money. Now, the agreed upon option period money is going to be $200 for 5 days. So you're going to set a separate check written out directly to the seller saying, hey, thank you for allowing me to think about if I want to buy your house for the next 5 days. Here's your $200. You go to the closing table, that $200 will be applied to your closing costs. The time frame that you have to turn in the earnest money and the option period money is 72 hours. So if you go into contract on a Monday, that's day 0. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday by 5 p.m., the earnest money and the option money has to be turned in to title. One of the main things you want to do during this option period is get the home inspected. So when I'm working with my guys, I make sure that I put a list of inspectors in front of them and make sure like, hey, you can call as many as you want, but you want to make sure that you get a good idea of what the cost is going to be, the turnaround time for the inspection report, because remember, we're on a timeline. And whatever that inspection come back with, we want to make sure that we have time to negotiate. We want to make sure we get the inspection done ASAP. Typically, this is set up prior to even going under contract, just so we can have them on standby. And probably day 2 or 3 after being under contract, we can have an inspection report in our hands. Before you even submit an offer, well, I'll say even for the seller to accept the offer, they want to have a seller disclosure for you. A seller disclosure is a document that the seller is telling you everything they know to be true about the house. So you can go over it, you sign it, that means you accept the seller disclosure along with your offer. Now, if you don't, for some reason, you haven't seen the seller disclosure and we do have this house under contract, the seller have X amount of days, typically 3 to 5 days, that's already going to be on that contract when you submitted your offer on the time that they have to give you that seller disclosure. Now, remember, I know we talked about the option period is the time that you can back out the deal. Well, the seller disclosure also have a loophole for you to get 7 days to review that seller disclosure. And if you don't like what you see on that seller disclosure within that 7-day period, you can back out the deal and you just walk away with your earnest. That's why it's very keen for the sellers to get that seller's disclosure in front of the buyer prior to accepting the offer. The earnest money is turned in, option money is turned in, and you accepted the seller disclosure. Now we have to wait for your approval. This is going to take up the majority of the time within that 30 days after the offer is submitted. When you're working with the lender, you want to get these specific documents over to the lender so they can go ahead and start your loan approval process. Before you get to the point of the loan approval, what we shopped with at this point was something called the pre-qualification letter. Now that we're under contract, they're going to go through your documents with a fine-tooth comb. Now, the person that you've been working with thus far is called the loan officer. He or she is going to gather your documents and put a nice packet together and present it to the processor. The processor is going to go through it, making sure that everything looks right before the processor presents it to the underwriter. The underwriter is the person that ultimately gives you that stamp of loan approval, and then everything is all good to go. Now, if that offer that we submitted to the seller was contingent on you being approved, which is typically going to be the case, especially if you're shopping with a pre-qualification letter, that is when you tell the seller, hey, give me 14 days, 21 days. Within that 30-day period from the time they accept the offer to the close, all these days is going to be needed for you to get the loan approval. So this is why you want to make sure that you're working with the lender every day, being in constant communication, because a lot of times they're going to come back and say, oh, we need this or we need that. And you just ready to just give it right back to them playing hot potato. So once you get that loan approval, that's when everything is good on the financing side. There's 2 parts of this. You have to qualify and the house has to qualify. The approval process of the house is done with an appraisal. Now, the appraisal is also something that's typically going to be ordered ASAP from the lender so they can go ahead and get the value of the home, because it has to match the amount of money that you agreed to buy from that seller. The lender is not going to give the buyer not a penny more than what the appraiser says that value of that home is. So when the appraiser come in and say the house is for $500,000 and they come back and say that it's worth $490,000, now we got to go back to the negotiation table and say, hey seller, your house came in lower than what we thought. Is there any way that you can drop down to $490,000? In these situations, you want to keep in mind that anything that you and the seller agree to above the appraised value is going to come out of your pocket at the closing table. Let me say that again. The lender is not going to give you any money above what that appraised value came in at. So let's recap. We got the earnest money turned in, option period has passed, seller disclosure has already been approved, the lender got your documents, and we're waiting to hear back from the appraiser, along with the approval from the underwriter. While all of these things going on, the moment the title company gets the contract and sees that your home is in an HOA, they order the HOA documents. Once these documents come in, you get 3 days to review. Now, I know we talked about how many times the buyer can get out using the option period, using the seller disclosure, and you also have the HOA documents. Say, for example, you wanted to build a pool in your backyard, and that's the only reason you wanted to buy this house, and the HOA said that you can't put a pool in your backyard. That right there is enough for you to say, hey, I don't want this house. But you get 3 days after receiving those HOA documents to review and bring this up to the seller's attention and let everybody know that you want to back out. So here we are. The underwriter has looked at your documents and gave you that stamp of approval. The HOA documents came in, you reviewed them, and you still want the house. The appraisal came in, and it came in at value of $500,000. Everything is good to go. Now the next document you want to look for is the settlement statement. The lender is going to put together some numbers to let you know, hey, I know this is what we discussed it when you fill out your application at the beginning on the loan disclosure. That's pretty much is going to be an estimate. Well, these numbers that we're looking for right now, 3 days before closing, is going to be the settlement statement, and these are going to be the exact numbers that you're going to sign off on at closing. The amount of money that you need to bring to the table, your interest rate that should be already locked in at this point, and your mortgage payment. All of these things is going to be on this documentation. Another thing that's going on while those documents are coming in is our final walkthrough. We're going to do a walkthrough 3 days prior to closing. So if we ask the seller to fix anything from the inspection, this is the time to verify that they fixed it. This is going to come in a form of an amendment, meaning it's going to be addition to the contract. So if we go do this walkthrough and we still see things are messed up and they didn't necessarily fix them what they agreed to fix, this is grounds to either push back closing or say, hey, we don't want this house anymore, because at this point, the seller has basically breached the contract. This doesn't happen often, but we definitely want to make sure that you understand all your options. So we did the walkthrough, everything was up to par, and we got the settlement statement signed off on and saying, hey, the numbers look good, I'm ready to go. And you also got the clear to close. Clear to close is basically, you can celebrate, I will say, but I gotta tell my guys, don't celebrate until after you finish closing and sign everything, because anything could happen. That is a point where you can just kind of breathe a little easy, and only thing you got to do from here is schedule your time and date to close at the title company, and you should be good to go. I'm not gonna go over closing in this video, but pretty much it's going to go over everything that you already seen. Actually, these documentation is going to be in front of you, and you're going to basically learn about your house when it comes to the documentation side of things. I know that was a lot, and I wanted to be very detailed with this one. And it's still, like I said, it's so many different things out there that we can still go over. I just wanted you to get the overall process in front of you. And a lot of things that we're talking about right now, you're going to know prior to putting in that offer. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Again, my name is Raoul, broker in the Austin area. Reach out if you're looking for any assistance buying or selling, and I look forward to the next video. Thanks.